In my previous video, I have presented my potential discovered frequential orbital motion quantization mechanism of celestial objects that appear to unite two pillars of quantum mechanics on one hand, the Broglie and Born and classical physics on the other hand via Kepler's third law. In this video, I will present the other aspect of this mechanism that appears also to unite two other pillars of quantum mechanics, Heisenberg and Schrödinger, and classical physics via Kepler's second law. The first fundamental component of this frequential orbital motion quantization mechanism is the orbital frequency of captive celestial objects. Based on my potential findings, it appears that every captive celestial object, like a planet, is equipped by its Captor celestial object, like a star, with an orbital frequency denominated here as dc. For a captive, its orbital frequency is materialized by the division of the speed of light, c, and its orbital velocity, v. Hence, the equation dc equals c over v. Then there come the laws of the orbital frequency of captive celestial objects. Based on my potential findings, the Captor sets up a unique orbital frequency for a captive in order to determine the latter's orbital velocity, orbital radius, and orbital period, as shown in the present equations. Based on my potential discovered frequential orbital motion quantization mechanism, it turns out that, on one hand, the determination of the orbital radius of captive celestial objects is defined by the discovered equation R as presented here, and on the other hand, the determination of the orbital period of captive celestial objects is defined by the discovered equation T as presented here. The two set determinations of orbital radius and orbital period are operated constantly while the captive revolves around its captor. As my potential discovery went further, there appears to exist a quantum direct link from frequential orbital radius and orbital period of captive celestial objects to Kepler's second law. Kepler's second law states that for the same amount of orbiting time, the wedge-like surfaces generated by the sweeping of the Captor captive axle along the captive's orbit must always remain equal regardless of where the captive starts along its orbit. Based on my potential discovered frequential orbital motion quantization mechanism, its orbital radius and period equations R and T, and the logical extrapolation therefrom, the quantum makeup of this direct link appear to take shape as the two potential Schrödinger wave functions, the Captor's wave function operating along the Captor captive quantum axle, and the captive wave function operating along its orbit. This is because my analysis and logical extrapolation therefrom has revealed that there can exist a possible quantum projection of the two set orbital radius and orbital period equations R and T of the discovered frequential orbital motion quantization mechanism as presented here. And this possible quantum projection is two separate Schrödinger wave functions, one for the captor and one for the captive celestial object, as shown in the present diagram. The propagators of the two captor of the captive wave functions are composed of a gravitational energy potential, Gm over c squared or Gm over c cubed, and a quantizer, aka orbital frequency, dc squared or dc cubed. When these two wave function propagators meet each other, each wave function collapses into a new position and a new momentum. The collapses get translated for both the captive and the captor, a new radial position and a new momentum, hence velocity. However, due to the Captor captive vast ratio in most cosmic scenarios, the Captor's new positional momentum are very small and therefore negligible. The two Captor and Captor wave functions appear to obey Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. When the two wave function propagators meet each other, each of them becomes the observer of the other, and that causes the collapse of the latter's wave function. Based on my analysis, the quantum behaviors of Captor and Captor wave function propagators can directly explain the classical gravity behavior of the Captor: high orbital velocity at perihelion and low orbital velocity at aphelion. While the said two wave function propagators always maintain the same velocity due to the same gravitational energy amount per time unit, represented by the value gm over c squared or gm over c cubed. The number of collisions between these propagators varies because it depends on the distance of the moment between the captor and the captive, therefore can be widely different. Consequently, at every set propagator's collision, the captive's momentum changes due to Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Here's the trigger of the new orbital distance advancement issued by the captive itself. As a result, during any predefined temporal unit, the closer the captor is to the captive, the higher the number of collisions between the two wave function propagators will be, and the longer the additional orbital distance the captive will make. This quantum scenario is reversed when the captor and the captive get further away from each other. Should my potential discovered frequential orbital motion quantization mechanism of celestial objects get validated? All of this would be the actual quantum inner workings of how in classical gravity the captive gets a higher and higher orbital velocity while approaching the perihelion and a lower and a lower orbital velocity while approaching the aphelion. And finally, should my potential discovered frequential orbital motion quantization mechanism of celestial objects get validated, quantum gravity must operate at both the square value of the speed of light and the cube value of the speed of light too, as demonstrated in the two present equations. All of my potential discoveries presented in this video are part of my long process of study, discovery, and mathematical validation. And for this particular subject of research, there are two relevant books. The first book is Heisenberg Kepler Wave Function at Quantum Speed of Gravity c cubed. The second book is Orbital Velocity Radius Quantization Mechanism Hidden Behind Newton-Einstein Gravity.